Hey, it's Matt. Welcome to this next episode of Courage and Clarity, a conversation with leaders to help you make the most out of all that you've been given. Hey, I want to spend some time today in the next few episodes talking about preaching. And specifically, what I want to do is to show you a way that you can grow and improve as a preacher using some simple basic systems like planning and preparation. But before we get there, I want to have a conversation that I think is really critical for us as pastors and preachers, and that is to get back to square one about why we preach in the first place. Now, you and I both know a couple of answers that are true for everybody. One is that if we preach, that is the most significant work that we do within the kingdom of God. That it has the opportunity to make the biggest impact on the most number of people. And so we know that it matters and we know that it's important. We also know that preaching is a significant way that we bring glory to God. And so I know those reasons and you know those reasons, but I want to go deeper. And so I want to know why you're watching this video. I want to know why you are jumping on a 10-minute video with a guy like me wanting to improve as a preacher. I want to know why you want to preach. And I want to show you the power of that question and why I think it matters so much from my own story. It doesn't directly relate to preaching, but I think you'll see the connection. I moved here in 2004 to become the lead pastor of what is now Christ Community Church. And when I got here, there were about 35 people in the church. And the church had grown. It was 15 years old at one point in time, and it got up to about 150 people. And then the founding pastor left, and the wheels had fallen off. And so what I inherited was a broken church filled with really wonderful people who were pretty beat up. And so over the next 5 years that we just really kind of struggled to get back to square one. And we had some wins, we had some losses, but along the way, it was frustrating to me. I moved here at 28. People had told me that it would take a while, but quite honestly, I didn't believe them. And so I just thought we'd get further faster, and we didn't, and it was a real struggle. And so, I came to a place where I began to doubt whether I should be here. I began to seriously doubt whether I should be in pastoral ministry. And I can remember a conversation with a friend of mine where I was getting pretty honest and feeling like I was getting towards a breaking point. And he's a good friend, a counselor, and after a little while hearing me vent, he just said, "Why are you doing this?" I didn't know if he meant why was I fussing to him over the phone or what he was talking about. He said, no. Why are you a pastor? And I had a couple of just kind of pretty surfacey kind of answers, and he just kept asking me, okay, but why that? And why that? And why does that matter? And it took me a long time to dig down into the bedrock of why I do what I do. And it was really the first time that I was able to articulate what I've been able to really carry with me, both in that church as I continue to pastor, and what I do in my business and how it affects videos like this as I'm shooting for you. And you hear it every episode of Courage and Clarity that the reason that I wake up in the morning, what shapes my parenting, what shapes the pastoring of my church, what shapes the leadership of my business and my work with clients and my shooting videos like this and creating resources for someone like you, is that I'm absolutely committed to helping people make the most out of all that God's given them. That is the driving force. That is the heartbeat for me and the work that I do. And once I was able to recapture that and clarify that, it seemed to bring me back to life. And so when we talk about preaching, and as important as you might think it is to get better as a preacher, if you don't take time to ask and answer the question, why do I preach? I'm absolutely convinced that you are going to be making half-hearted efforts towards improvement. You might be going through the motions and look like you're really trying to grow, but you have no life force behind that. There's no catalyst for you to continue to grow and improve. So I want to encourage you to do that, to take time, to take 5, 10, 15 minutes and just sit and think about why you preach. Why don't you go do something else? Why do you preach? Now, let's assume that you have an answer to that now, okay? So you can pause if you need to and take 5 minutes or so to kind of clarify why. But once you kind of have a sense of why, then let's assume that you are now hoping that I can help you improve as a preacher. Now, a couple of ways that I want to do that in this video. One is I want to point out just some of the mistakes that we commonly make whenever we want to improve anything, but particularly as it relates to preaching. I'm going to show you 3 mistakes that are commonly made whenever we try to grow and improve as a preacher. Okay, that's first. And then second, I want to show you the power of having a very simple framework and how that allows you, having a framework, having a system, having a process, how that actually helps you to grow. So first, let's talk about the mistakes that we tend to make when we're trying to improve as preachers. The first mistake that I think it's very easy to make is for us to continue to think that we improve by accumulating more information and knowledge. It's a very common strategy in practice that we're going to go read a book, we're going to go to a conference, we're going to watch a video like this, and we feel like if we just simply knew more, then we'd be better at our craft. And the truth is that while information is important, there's a reason that I'm shooting this video. There's a reason why books are written. There's a reason why conferences are held. That if you're not committed to taking action on that information, then quite honestly, you're fooling yourself and you're not going to see the kind of growth that you want to see. You do not grow simply by accumulated information and knowledge. But when you actually follow through and put information into action, that's what's going to help you. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you at the end of this video, there are a couple things that I want you to do, a couple of questions that I want you to ask and answer that will help you kind of take the next step. But let's not be men and women who are committed to just simply soaking in more information. That's not how we grow. We grow and we improve when we learn things and put those into action. So whether it's in a book, whether it's at a conference, whatever we do, let's be the people who show up and take next steps. Because the first mistake that we tend to make when we try to improve as a preacher is simply by growing in our knowledge. The second mistake that we make when we are trying to grow and improve as a preacher is that we assume that we are just kind of well-rounded in our preaching. And so we look at all the things that it takes to be a good preacher. Everything from our ability to plan ahead, kind of our preparation strategy, our delivery, different things we do in our delivery. We think that we are just kind of super well-rounded. We feel like that's the goal, is for us to be really good at a number of things. And the truth is, what I find is when you think about the preachers that you enjoy the most, if you were to take the top 10 most popular, well-known preachers in your own tribe, think about their preaching and think about what they do best. And what you're going to have is a picture of preachers who are not well-rounded. There's something they do uniquely well. There's something that they do in some ways better than other people. And that's the reason why we're drawn to them. Maybe this guy's funny. Maybe that guy's really practical. Maybe that person's a genius at being able to bring out some of the nuances and flavors and nodes of a biblical text. Maybe somebody's really good at being able to get into the theology of a particular text. Whatever reason, they're a storyteller, whatever it might be. There's a particular thing that they do that makes them who they are as a preacher. And I think until we really find that, until we really hone in on what we do best, then I think we miss the opportunity to make the biggest impact. So there are all kinds of areas that we need to be responsible in. But what I'm going to encourage you as you're growing is to find the thing that you do best and invest a lot of time and energy and resources into making sure that you're continuing to grow in that area. Don't rest on the laurels of what you do best so everything else can catch up. Be responsible in all areas of planning, preparation, and delivery, but find the one thing, the two things that you do best, and make sure that you're putting a lot of effort and energy into continuing to improve in those, because my guess is that's the reason why people love listening to you in the first place. And then the third mistake that I think people take, and see people take a lot, and I struggle with this too, is that we kind of look at everything that we're doing and we forget that instead of just kind of throwing things up against a wall, that there are simple frameworks and processes and systems that can actually help us improve. And so one of the things that I have found that impacted me the most about 4 years ago when I began my journey as a bivocational preacher is that I had to find ways to save time. I had to find ways to take things that I was doing repetitively and put it into templates and processes and systems to be able to focus my time and energy in a certain way. And so I've just become a big believer in systems and processes. And so what I'm going to be talking about in some upcoming episodes are the power of those systems, having a planning system where you're thinking ahead throughout the year, a way for you to be able to invest in other people in a preaching team, the way that you can begin thinking about your own context and how you preach the gospel from every single text in any sermon. You need to talk about your preparation system, how you have a consistent sermon preparation time. how you have a consistent way in which you kind of frame and map out your sermon, how you basically do a good job of taking your main point and saying it in such a way that it focuses people's attention on the main point of your message. And then your delivery system, how you make sure that you are really doing a great job preaching in the power of the Holy Spirit, how you cultivate a life of prayer that helps bring your words to life, how you think about, do you use a manuscript, do you use notes, do you use no notes, do you use an outline, all those type of things. How do you evaluate a sermon? All those pieces of improving as a preacher can really be boiled down to 3 simple systems. So I'm going to talk about those in future episodes, but I want to leave you with this. Here's the reason why I think systems are so critically important when it comes to your improvement and development. Number 1, they help you isolate both your strengths and your weaknesses. When you're able to see within the framework of a system certain elements that are contributing to preaching, you basically have a map to what you do as a preacher, and you're going to find some things that you do well and some things that you don't do so well. So a framework can help you isolate the things you don't do well that you need to grow towards responsibility in, and then it's going to really show you what you thrive in, what you do best, and it's going to show you a way to get better at that. That's the power of a good framework. That framework should isolate certain things that you're then going to take action on. A good system and process and framework is going to lead you to take consistent action. That we're not looking to just sort of sprint and then get lazy, sprint and then get lazy. The idea behind a really good framework and system is that it's going to give you a way day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, to consistently grow in your progress as a preacher. And so when it isolates you on certain particular ways and areas that you need to grow and gives you a clear plan of action, then that framework's going to come to life. And if you have a way that you're doing that together, whether you're part of an online community, whether you have a coach, whatever it might be, when you're not trying to get through this on your own, then I think that's going to be something that is immensely meaningful and powerful for you. Matter of fact, I would go back and rephrase what I said was the third mistake. I would say this, that the third mistake is not understanding the power of a framework. It's forgetting the fact that you weren't made to do all of this on your own. I think it is unbelievably powerful for you to recognize the opportunity that you have to grow in community, to grow with the help of somebody else. When you and I try to grow and improve as preachers on our own, I think that our results are going to lag behind those people who decide to commit to a framework and a process in community with other people, other preachers in their church. They have a coach, they're part of an online program, whatever that might be. So those are the mistakes we have to avoid. Trying to do everything on our own, doing things, just trying to be well-rounded, and then trying to really just gain more information. If you want to grow, you turn information into action, you isolate what you do best, and then you grow together in community. All right, so here's what I want you to do. In terms of courage, I want you to commit to improving as a preacher. More than half of the preachers that I know in a recent survey came back and said they felt like their preaching was stuck. It had plateaued. That's my guess is why you're watching this. It's probably not because you're killing it. It's because you're trying to figure out how to take the next step. So I want you to commit to growing as a preacher. I want you to commit to watching the next episode we put out as we begin to think about the solution and what this framework might look like for you to grow and improve as a preacher. But the second thing that I want you to do in terms of getting clarity around this, I want you to do 2 things. I want you to answer 2 questions, and I'd love for you to either put them in the comment section below, or I want you to email me at matt@gridiron.com. I'll link that up in the section below this video where it explains what we're talking about. But I want you to answer these 2 questions. Number 1, I want you to write down what is your goal in the next 3 months. What area of preaching do you want to grow in? Do you want to become better at planning? Do you want to become better at preparation? Do you want to become better at delivery? Planning, preparation, or delivery, what area do you want to grow in the next 3 months? That's number 1. And then number 2, I want you to tell me why that matters. Why do you need to grow in planning? Why do you need to grow in preparation? Why do you need to grow in delivery? So again, those 2 things. Where do you want to grow? Why does that matter? Leave it in a comment below. Send it to me via email. I want to interact with you and help you however I can. So there's the episode. If this was helpful for you, would love if you would share this with somebody else. The more that we do this, and the more opportunity that we're going to have to help as many leaders as possible make the most out of all that God's given them. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention, and look forward to seeing you next week for the next episode of Courage and Clarity. Take care, y'all.